Hi, I'm Jane Hilsden, marketing consultant and founder of Dragonfly Marketing. Welcome to this episode of the How to Do Marketing Show, a no-nonsense podcast about marketing for small business. It's our mission at Dragonfly Marketing to put marketing on the agenda for every regionally based small business in Australia. Why? Because we know that when marketing is done properly, it can help grow your business. We believe small businesses are the backbone of our nation. When your business grows, it benefits not only you and your family, it benefits your whole community. Small businesses create a vibrant and connected economy. We employ local people, we donate to local charities, and we work together to build resilient and thriving regional communities. The How to Do Marketing Show is a podcast just for you and your small business. Bursting with marketing insight and information, this show will be a fabulous resource to help you know all there is to know about the topic of marketing for small business. Now, before I introduce my next guest, I wanted to ask you something. Do you want to find out how you can create high-impact marketing campaigns on a small budget? Because if you do, I think I may have something for you. Something that we are immensely proud of at Dragonfly Marketing is the fact that we have won the Small Budget Marketing Award at the Australian Marketing Institute Awards for Excellence 3 times. And we've done this by creating super smart and creative marketing campaigns that have achieved amazing results on a super tight budget. That's what we specialise in. It's our superpower. But this doesn't come from just winging it. It comes from years of experience creating marketing campaigns for small businesses. We've got a formula, we know exactly what works, and now we want to share this information with you. So if you think this is something you'd like to get your hands on, head to dragonflymarketing.com.au/high impact small budget and sign up to receive our e-guide 10 steps to creating high impact marketing on a small budget. And now to introduce this episode's guest. And I'd love you to allow me to introduce you to the fabulous Kate Cook, otherwise known as the Marketing Attribution Gal. Marketing attribution, of course, is just another word for marketing measurement. Kate is a marketing measurement specialist. At Dragonfly Marketing, we are huge believers in the power of marketing measurement. We have it literally entrenched within every project we work on, both on behalf of our clients as well as for our own marketing. Measuring your marketing is the only way that you will know if your marketing investment is bringing you a return. It helps you make better decisions when it comes to marketing planning and optimization. It can also be super motivating to see how your marketing efforts are making a real impact, particularly when you see this manifest to your bottom line results. Kate is a puzzle-loving, data-driven marketing mentor with 10 years of experience across search marketing, social media, content marketing, email, automation, sales funnels, and more. She helps digital marketers, agencies, and in-house marketing teams win over their stakeholders by navigating their campaign data, adding a splash of MarTech wizardry, and building out intelligent, data-driven reporting frameworks to make their best decisions daily. In this episode, we talk about some of the data that is available and easily accessed for you to measure, how you can easily and regularly measure the results of your marketing, the different types of marketing metrics that you can measure, and much more. So if you're keen to find out what works and what doesn't when it comes to marketing, grab a pen and paper, sit back and enjoy these great tips from Kate Cook. Hi, Kate, and welcome to the How to Do Marketing Show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Good, because I'm so happy that you're here because we're actually going to talk about one of my very favourite topics, which is measurement. But before we kick off, I would like to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests these days, and it's really about why you do what you do. Now, you on your website call yourself a data geek, and you're known as the quotation mark attribution gal, close quotation mark. So what is it that makes data and measurement and attribution so exciting for you, Kate?
I think data has the ability to bring confidence to a conversation and empower and enable us to make our most profitable decisions. So for me, like I started my career as a digital marketer and I earned my Scout badges across, SEO and paid ads and email funnels. And then I jumped into a couple of generalist marketing roles, but I found that it was so difficult to meaningfully create influence and influence my peers and business owners without being able to show and demonstrate exactly what I intended to get from my marketing investment. So at the end of the day, everyone wants to just know what's going to hit the bank. And I think marketing can feel like that super seemingly impossible puzzle. But it's actually not that hard if we know where to look.
Yeah. So you're solving a real problem, because I think any small business owner will, understand from their perspective that it's really hard to have that confidence in laying out the investment that some of your marketing needs, without knowing or without having an idea of how much return that's going to bring, or what does that investment actually bring me. And as marketers, as a marketer myself, I hear you. Like, my goodness, everybody wants to know, how the how the marketing that we're doing is affecting their bottom line. And so measurement has become a huge part of what we do as well. And I think too, if you're results driven, the measurements are important. Like if you're doing something for a reason, if you're setting an objective or a goal, you want to know whether you've reached it. You can't do that without measurement.
Definitely. And it's about tracking the right things, but also as much as it is about financial investment, it's also time. I see a lot of small business owners in early stage startup not necessarily be throwing thousands into advertising, but they could be spending days, creating Instagram stories. And is that where your audience is? Is that really profitable for you?
Yeah. Gosh, that is so true. Yay, I'm so excited about this conversation. So can you first off start by explaining what marketing attribution is, and in particular, why small businesses should really lean into what we're going to be discussing today? If you could give us a bit of a clue around particularly the term marketing attribution.
Yeah, sure. So marketing attribution is a method of determining exactly what activities in our marketing mix are the ones that are responsible for driving, but then also nurturing people to take the actions that we really want them to take. Yeah. So when we work out which channels are most effective, we can invest more time and energy into those areas and have the same budget work harder for us.
Yeah, which is the why behind that. So it's really just about understanding where you should be spending your money. So effectively, it's that measurement piece, right?
Definitely. So getting, the right tracking in place, knowing where to look, because there's so much data. So it's really about discerning those meaningful few data points rather than falling into analysis paralysis and kind of going, where am I supposed to be looking? And really turning data into insight, which is the main thing, and then making a decision off the back of that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that overwhelm piece that you're referring to in terms of, like there's so much data that's able to be tracked, but you don't need necessarily all of it. I think that's actually a really important piece, because it absolutely can lead to a bit of overwhelm if you try and get too entrenched in it. But when it comes to data, like from a big picture perspective, what is out there at the moment? Because I reckon there's a lot of small business owners who just don't even know what's possible to track. Like if we can start by saying, well, what is the main data that's currently being collected by, businesses across the board, large and small, and then how are they using that to help them make better decisions?
Yeah, look, there's so much data available these days, and there's data that we collect ourselves, there's data that we can leverage from other organizations working together, and there's buying data. There's so much from like that large enterprise level, but there's really only 3 stages. It's kind of we're starting small with being able to track what's happening kind of in aggregate on our website, for example. So we want to know how many people are coming to the website, where are they coming from, what interactions are they taking with us? And then, the next layer up from that is very much around capturing customer data. So whether you do that in a piece of software or even in an Excel spreadsheet or in your email platform, email addresses, names, phone numbers, geographic location, address, all of those things, as well as what's actually hitting our bank. So some people use Xero or like whatever your accounting software looks like. Or if you're an online e-commerce business, maybe that's just in Shopify for now.
Yeah.
And then, there's the utopia, which is what the larger enterprises use. And I kind of help to set some of those up sometimes. And that's like big data warehouses, which is the next level piece.
So scare us and tell us what those, because we will just focus on the small business measurement, but I'm curious to know, what are big businesses tracking? Because there's obviously an ability to be able to track so much and with so much detail. So what are some of the big businesses tracking?
Yes, well, I'll give you an example that I often share with clients to understand sort of the power of data and what we could do, and what, any small business can, has the power to become a very big business. So anyone has the power to do this one day as well. So airports actually are very, very clever with the way that they use their data. They know a lot about their customers and their level of affluence based on where they've come from, the airline that they're flying with. And I don't know if anyone's experienced this, but sometimes your gate will change at the last minute and you've got to do a bit of a runner. And they always allow you to, have a bit of time between to make your way over to the next gate. But what you might not know is often that's determined by an algorithm designed to have you walk past certain stores based on how much they think that you might spend. So if you're somebody who is like, gets off a plane from maybe Emirates, which is, a little bit more expensive than, say, Jetstar, then they might have you walk past duty free. And if it's Jetstar, they might have you walk past the food court.
Wow. I can't believe as a marketer, I'm sitting here with my mouth wide open. I had never even thought of that.
So I think, it's around us absolutely everywhere. And I think a whole conversation about data and privacy could be an interesting topic for another day for sure.
Yeah. And I think, the average person doesn't realize, like even in terms, like if we talk about remarketing and the Facebook pixel, and, I'm sure Google puts these pixels on the sites as well, because they also do remarketing. But when ads seem to follow you around the internet, that's because ads literally are following you around the internet based on behavior that you're taking. And I walk my dog with an older gentleman on the beach every morning, and he was saying how he had just installed ad blocker on his computer because he was just so horrified at the amount of ads that he was receiving.
Yeah, and it's a real challenge actually for us, ad blocking, because that can often interfere with things like, our Google Analytics website tracking. So if we're, trying to understand who's visiting website and interactions that they're taking, that can kind of prevent some of the tracking mechanisms that we have in place there. So we want to be, as marketers, doing the best that we can to serve relevant ads kind of as a whole, so that people don't, feel the need to install those blockers.
Well, and I think too, it's just the fact that people feel a bit violated, I guess, by it. That's right. If you're serving them up the right content, well, they're probably not going to mind so much. And it's probably particularly that older generation. But yeah, when he was so horrified, and he was like, people wouldn't people wouldn't understand the extent at which they're being targeted and how many, things are being tracked from their computer. And of course, I'm sitting there with my marketing hat going, but I kind of use that all the time. I find it actually really helpful. That makes our job a hell of a lot easier. So sorry, I can't agree with you there. I'm with you, Kate, in terms of, well, if you're serving up the right content, hopefully everybody's happy. But that's fascinating about the airports. Okay, so data is serious, and that's an excellent example of how airports are using their data and their demographic information to actually make a business decision to send you on a certain route throughout the airport, so that you're spending money with the people who have leases, have shops in their airport. Okay. Get it. Okay. So for a small business, Now, you mentioned a couple before, but what are the particular measurements and metrics that you would recommend that small businesses monitor regularly?
So I actually just did a post on this recently because I'm getting asked this question a lot of, what are just, if I only have a couple of metrics to track, which one should I be looking at? There's so many. My favorite are actually in Google Analytics, once you have that installed on your website, is looking at two metrics. One's called path length and the other one's called time lag. So path length tells us how many interactions that it took a person to interact with your website before they took the action that you wanted them to take. And time lag tells us how many days it took them to get there. So, for example, I could, interact with the website 3 times in one day and purchase, or, over a period of 6 days or 7 days, and then, interact with the website multiple times over that time period. So the reason that this is so interesting is from an attribution perspective, we can get a sense of how long it takes people to buy from us. And therefore, if we're trying to manage our marketing mix, that tells us, so should we be doing just advertising, or do we also need to do things like email to nurture them through that process? Because if it's taking them a little longer to make that decision, then we know that there's some barriers there.
Wow. Okay. They are 2 metrics that I have not looked at before. So generally in our measurements, we're looking at things like how many people have visited your website, how many people have come from Facebook, how many people have come from Instagram, how long roughly are they spending on the site, what's your bounce rate, as in how many people are bouncing off your site as soon as they kind of bounce on, et cetera, et cetera. But that is really, really fascinating to go that extra level and go, okay, so they're on the website. How are they using that website, and how many touch points have they kind of had specifically with that website to help make a decision? Oh, well, I guess in order to make a decision to then buy from you. So that's really interesting. So are those metrics available with the free Google Analytics? So you don't need to have set up ads or anything like that. That's actually, and which headings that under? Is it attribution? I think there is.
It will be under the conversion section, actually.
The conversion. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I might even try and remember to put a little screenshot of that. And just for all the small business owners that are listening, if you haven't set up Google Analytics on your website, can you please, the next thing you do after listening this, can you please go and ask your web developer, or if you're technically astute, can you go and do it yourself? Set up Google Analytics. It's free. It takes a couple of minutes to set up. And the information that you can get, I've just learned something new about it, is just invaluable. You can do it, you can get all of this insight for free. It's a no-brainer. Okay, so there's some really good there's some really good insights that you can track there. Gosh, you've just got me thinking. You've thrown me with those ones, Kate. I'm ticking over in my head going, gosh, I'm going to go and deep dive further into these. These are great.
Well, I could share an example with you, maybe in terms of how I use that to then make a decision about.
Please do.
So one of my clients recently, I was working with her on a report, and I've looked at these 2 metrics for her, and I found it really interesting that we found 96% of people were purchasing on the first interaction on the first day. So that means that whatever she's doing from a marketing perspective, which is a different question, but is really effective, or she's either clearly reaching the right people who want to buy immediately. Those people are hot, or her product's just selling like hotcakes. It's amazing. Fantastic. But in terms of where it was interesting to me was that means that there's only 4% of people really that require nurturing more than one interaction. But she was investing a lot in remarketing, which you mentioned before. So I was thinking that doesn't really add up.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not a strategy that we should be implementing. And what would happen if we reallocated some of that budget and that time investment from email, creating email campaigns, doing all of this from a nurturing perspective, and also the budget that we invested in remarketing, and put that in some more of the top of funnel campaign, so the broader ad targeting, because people were buying straight away.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Why do you think they were buying straight away? Like, what was her website doing to help people? Like, is it a big purchase we're talking about? Is it a small purchase? Like, what do you think made people purchase straight away?
Yeah, look, they vary in price from about like $150 all the way through to thousands of dollars, which is really interesting. In terms of how to unpick that puzzle of is it, that we're just finding the exact right people,
Yeah,
or is it that a combination of that and like the effectiveness of the website? It's usually a combination of all
both.
things. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I often talk about, and I have like a 5-day attribution challenge where I talk about, all of the things that we should do when we're trying to understand how to make those effective decisions. But really, it's about kind of understanding that the mindset is not an all or nothing one. It's often this like complexity, which is why it kind of data can feel so scary and why we often avoid kind of thinking about it, because it's often a bit of everything. And then that feels hard to kind of justify. But in order to kind of understand which part of that mix it could be, or like anything that, what of all the decisions that we're making, which ones are really moving the needle there, that's when I would run something like a customer survey and be like, who are these people? How can I understand them more deeply? And therefore, if that sort of seems to marry up with like the ad targeting that we have running, that it's clear that maybe we're just finding the right people. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you're right, because you've gone out and found the right people, but you can still bring the right people to a website and then confuse them at the website point. You can bring them to, and they're like so excited to buy, and then they get to your website and go, oh, and particularly when the purchase is a couple of $1,000s. So is this a service or a product?
It's a product. So online courses. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's an online course. Yep. Okay. Interesting. Oh, that's really fascinating. Thanks for that example. That's great. So speaking of kind of systems and processes that you can kind of wrap around this, you've actually developed a marketing attribution system. And I'd also like to hear about the challenge if it kind of ties into this, but you've developed a marketing attribution system that helps businesses track and understand their data without getting too overwhelmed. So can you run us through at a kind of top level how this system works?
Yeah, so I do talk about it in the challenge, that I've created this free kind of 5-day email challenge just to try to help walk people through and warm up to this concept. I think it's my mission to try to make data sexy. I don't know if I'll make that happen in my lifetime, but I'm that's the mission.
Love it.
Is to get people to become really interested and obsessed with sort of tracking in the same way that we track, our accounting. I think that marketing measurement is something that can be really simple if we just set it up right. And then it's just a matter of maintaining it. We would never not log our expenses and track our revenue. And to me, this is exactly the same thing. If we have a super simple system, then we will maintain it. So for me, it's about, not getting so distracted by all of the different metrics that we can track, but instead focus on the ones that are really driving the outcome that we need. So for me, there's basically only like 3 layers. We can categorize all of our marketing activity into trying to do one of these 3 things. We're either trying to drive eyeballs, new people who have not seen us before. We're trying to either turn those eyeballs into some level of meaningful engagement, and then often trying to turn that meaningful engagement into some kind of action. So we know that it takes multiple touch points with a brand, often in order to have whether that's even just, seeing the brand in your feed, not necessarily interacting with the website, where we were talking about path length and interactions and time lag before. But in terms of, I guess engaging people to understand who are they, can we get them to the website? That would be, something like an impression on an ad. That's clearly an eyeball that we're attracting.
Yes.
Engagement would be, that visit to the website perhaps, or, did they download a free guide or sign up for a 10% discount? And then taking that meaningful action. So like we want them to buy eventually, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we look at all of our activity, not by like how effective is Facebook for me, but instead allocate some of the activities that we're doing. So let's say we're doing a lot on stories on Instagram and they're organic. If we kind of are generally tracking how many people seem to be looking at us and then how many of those people seem to be engaging with us and then how many of those people seem to be falling out the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's really only 3 metrics. It takes a few steps to get there, but once we've got it set up, it's really easy to just benchmark, and then all we have to do is measure increase or decrease, and then we can tell if we're making good decisions or not.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we've got something set up. That sounds very, very similar to that. Honestly, I just use like an Excel spreadsheet to kind of measure it in that order: awareness, engagement, and conversion. And that's all it really needs to be, isn't it? It's just literally just tracking the numbers. Do you use any particular software, or are there any tools that you use that you would recommend small businesses look at apart from the old humble Excel spreadsheet?
Actually, honestly, I use Excel too, and Google Sheets. I think that, it's just like everyone sort of always selling us a silver bullet tactic to 10x our ROI. Like, I think we can get so distracted by software and systems and tech, but really, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but anyone who's running their own reports completely knows that our data sits in a bunch of different places. Like, it's never in the one place.
No.
So there's a few things that I do to kind of make things a little bit more automated. So I'll often use Google Sheets instead, and then use things like Zapier to connect and create some automated, data entry and population into those sheets.
Yes.
And there's another tool called Supermetrics, which you can use too, which kind of can automatically have your like Google Analytics data, for example, sent over to, or Google AdWords or Facebook data sent over to Google Sheets.
Yeah.
I'll use Google Sheets too. And then it's just, creating a few graphs, creating a few reports. And then, like I said before, if you do the hard work up front, then you can just log in and kind of have it tracked for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. And those tools are a great heads up, because that's probably the biggest challenge that myself and my clients find is for the clients that we're working with that are doing it themselves, that it does take a little bit of time to actually go to Facebook and look at the data and the insights, go to Instagram and look at it there, go to LinkedIn and look at it there, go to, Google Analytics. To be honest though, I find the better you get at it, the faster that becomes, and it might take you 10 minutes or whatever per month, but it's so worth it. Like, what that can tell you, is just so worth it in terms of your overall investment of as you said, of time and money into your marketing. So you don't need the fancy dashboards.
No, definitely not. And I even carve out for myself in my own business, working on my business rather than always consulting and to other clients. Just have like a CEO ritual morning. So every Monday morning, I'll just kind of sit down and just run my numbers really quickly. And honestly, exactly as you say, once you've got the framework that you're using, it can take like 10 minutes to just quickly populate it. And then you can clearly see what decisions you're making and what impact they're having. Yeah,
fantastic. What do you call it? A CEO what?
CEO ritual.
Oh, ritual. I love it. Oh, I love that term. That's such a good idea. I love that you run them on a Monday morning too. That's awesome.
First up.
So what about mapping the results of our marketing, looking at our marketing attribution and matching that to our marketing budget? So if people have been organised enough to actually put a budget and assign a budget, whether it be for a 90-day plan, a 3-month, 12-month or whatever, is there an easy way that we can kind of match our attribution and our monthly measurements, let's just call it, to that budget?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I use Google Sheets, as I mentioned, and I often will work either with clients or with myself and just pull data directly out of Xero. So if you've got an accounting system, that can be really easy to just kind of export everything out, export your reports out and have a look at what where your expenses are and what your profit looks like and where your revenue sits. And I think, if we make a small effort to sort of start logging things even in our accounting system properly against marketing, then it makes that job a lot easier. We can kind of see that Facebook spend, if it is, you know, automatically being allocated to marketing, so that we can kind of see exactly what that spend looks like and what that return is. But I think, at the end of the day, like the source of truth is really what hit the bank and where those expenses came from, and then looking separately at what we seem to be driving from a conversion perspective.
That is such a good idea. And using a tool like Xero, exactly. It's as long as you've reconciled everything correctly and assigned it to marketing or Facebook advertising or whatever, that's a really great way to understand that level of kind of spend, I guess, versus return. Right. Okay. That's a really good idea. So when you're kind of looking at your reconciliation for the month, and you can assign your spend of this many dollars to September, for example. So we look at the results that we've got from our marketing over September. So we might have achieved, you know, this much Facebook reach. We've achieved this many click-throughs to our website, and we've received so many leads or inquiries about a product, or we have made so many sales. But the money that we've spent in September is probably actually setting us up for the leads and the sales, depending on your product and depending on what your lead time is probably actually setting us up for the leads and sales that we'll receive in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, depending. So is there a way that you can kind of understand the lag between kind of spend and conversion or return?
Totally. I love this question. And this is part of the reason why I think it's so important that we adopt reporting just like our accounting. Like, we have to adopt it as a system and measure it ongoing. So one of the super small and super simple things that I do with all of my clients, and recommend that everyone does, like from today, if you haven't already, is just setting up a Google sheet or an Excel sheet and call it a change log. And every time you make a decision about what marketing change you're making to your mix, whether it's I'm increasing budget on Facebook this month, or I'm changing the overall brand and marketing message to be this, or I'm starting to talk about this at the moment, or investing a bit more time and energy into LinkedIn, whatever that looks like, having that against the date helps when you are then looking at your data next to it. You can kind of clearly see what that impact has been. And if you've got an idea of the time in which it takes from, you know, we talked about the path length and time lag in terms of when they engage with us, but we can do the same thing on the bottom end. So once they've become a lead, how long does it take that lead to convert on average? Yeah. And if that's about, 3 months, as you say, that there's like a 3-month sales process, that's such a long sales process, but, maybe a house or something, then that can kind of help you to sort of model that for sure. Yeah. And I think we want to be able to create a graph that has like our spend and our outcomes next to one another, so that we can easily start to kind of see those patterns. But that's more about interpreting data, I think, once we've got it set up right.
Yeah, but I think it is important to understand, as you said, that lead time and how long it takes for a campaign to take effect. So you might have a particular campaign in market, and I think that's probably something to kind of add to the mix as well, not wanting to kind of overwhelm people, but even a bit like the change log, if which I guess is like your 90-day plan, your 90-day marketing plan, or your 12-month marketing plan. If you can see that marketing plan, so that you can see, well, for the months of June, July, August, this marketing was in place, and this was the sales that we got as a result. And then in, September, October, November, this was the marketing that was in place. Which then matches up to. So it's not just the investment that you made that you can see in Xero. It was, we ran this video campaign with this specific message, which drove this particular product, so again, you've kind of got the plan, the results almost, and then the spend.
Exactly. And I think, we like to think that we've got good memories, but we often don't. And the challenge that I often face is I'll be given access to like a client's Google Analytics account, and it's like, find me some insights. And I think sometimes without that context of, no doubt you're running a business, there's so many things that change. Our ability to just be able to look back and kind of go, okay, I can clearly see a spike here. What caused that spike? What happened on that day? We can't, like, trying to unpick that later is just such a fight, and we can make our lives so much easier by just planning a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And as you said, get the framework in place. So you've worked out what information you need to capture, what information you need to see side by side, because and I'm sure you would agree, even just seeing your measurements on a monthly basis, like there's no point, I believe, in going in and looking at your measurements in isolation each month. Like there's no point in just going in and saying, this is how many users, this is how many people visited our website this month. And then you go in a month later and say, this is how many visitors came to our website this month, because there's no context in that. It's just like, well, did it go up from last month? Did it come down from last month? Do you know what I mean?
Totally. And you make a really good point as well around like viewing windows. So do we look on a monthly basis? Do we look on a daily basis? Do we look on a weekly basis? And, often if you're like, depending on your business, that might have a huge impact on the way that you report. So ideally, we want to be able to get ourselves to a stage where we can choose the date range, whatever we like, so that we can compare different periods, because maybe, school holidays are a great example. They don't always fall in a linear week period. And we might want to know what happened during a school holiday period versus the week after it. And that's only something you can do if you're measuring day by day. But that's not to say that we all have to start measuring our metrics day by day. There's a lot of things that can make that process automated. And perhaps if you're listening and you feel like that day by day measurement is integral, then it maybe is at the point, maybe you are at the point where you kind of do need to look at investing in some measurement software or some dashboards that kind of help you do that, because you certainly don't want to be manually going in and collecting all of those things, and recording that yourself every single day. And I think too, the other thing is, when we're looking at that is, I think what we've described in that measurement format, looking at kind of what marketing was in market, what the results were, and, how much we spent, that kind of tracks our short-term activity and what we're actually driving in the short term. A lot of the stuff that we do in marketing as well is about building your brand. And that's not going to be trackable necessarily in that format. Totally. I so love that you have brought this up. A recent project of mine, I was working with a client to, run attribution on their entire mix. And one of the things that we found was that they were doing a really good job of, optimizing their platforms. But when we looked over time, their branded search traffic and their direct traffic hadn't really increased, which tells me that, we might be really effective from a channel perspective, but people are not recognizing the brand over time, and it doesn't have that stickiness. And we could only do that if we had years of data to be able to look and see whether or not that had any meaningful change. So yeah, absolutely. Like, get that Google Analytics installed today.
Yeah. That's right. And so then if we're looking at, because brand is a really, really hard one to kind of assign to the bottom line. And I know that there are a lot of, the larger organisations who have the funds to invest in extensive consumer, brand perception research, where they're actually going out to the market and, asking people about whether they recognise a brand or not and what they feel about it and all the rest. It's not necessarily their customers that they're asking, so they can understand, how does the general population, understand our brand? But that costs a lot of money to do. Are there any ways or metrics that you've kind of identified that can help measure those longer term kind of marketing activities, such as those brand building, marketing activities that we might put in place?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few things that I'll look at to try to understand if brand is having an effect over time. So one of them is looking at branded search traffic increases. And you can do this if you've
Ah,
got Google Analytics and look at how many people are actually typing in the name of your brand into Google, into search, in order to land on your website. So that's a interesting indicator. And you can do that on
yes.
Google Trends as well. Even if you've got enough of a sort of brand presence, you can often use Google Trends and it will map the same keywords for you. You can see them over time, even if you
Yeah.
haven't had Google Analytics installed. And the other one is direct traffic. So if people are going directly to your website, it's because they've either been there before and they're repurchasing from you, or
Yeah.
they've recognized the brand, or they've seen it on TV perhaps, which is often,
Yes.
a very brand building, top of funnel,
Yes.
marketing initiative. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. They that's excellent. Yeah, that's two really good metrics. And again, as you said, available on Google Analytics. I think we should be the brand ambassadors for Google Analytics right now. Google should be sending us some cash into our bank accounts for all of this, for all of this free marketing for them. So now, most marketers, like you and I mean, we're just loving this conversation. We're completely geeking out on what's possible with marketing measurement and attribution. However, and you kind of touched on this before, when it comes to reporting this marketing data to people outside of the marketing department, like you've either got those people who are like really demanding in terms of, we want to know exactly what our marketing spend is returning on the business. And then you've got those people who are like, we don't really care. We don't really get it. We don't really understand all of this data. We don't really understand the metrics. Is there a particular way to kind of take both of these people on the journey that can really kind of help them to engage? Because a lot of the people who are demanding how much is this making us? They're just looking for the end result. But as you spoke about, we're not always just measuring the end result. There's a lot of marketing that has to go before getting the end result. So
Definitely.
is there a way that we can kind of take these people on the journey to help them understand and engage with the measurements that that includes the top of funnel measurements, and how important it is to actually get eyeballs on your brand, all the way through to, yes, of course, making the sale and adding to the bottom line? Is there a good way to engage people with this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this speaks so closely to my heart, because it's exactly why I decided to build this business. Was constantly facing questions from people who were not understanding of end-to-end marketing and all of the things that we do, including brand, that make such a huge impact on that bottom line and in driving people through that funnel. So one of the metrics that I look at that I find is really compelling is actually tracking sort of cost effectiveness over time. So if we find that overall we are able to attract more people or gain more clicks because people are interested in us, and because we've warmed them up with brand previously, and we can kind of monitor and showcase how, with the same budget, we're able to kind of drive more effective outcomes. So even if it's not necessarily more clicks, but it's more conversions. So maybe with the same $2,000, if more people are converting, it's because we've warmed them up, or we're targeting them better, or we're making kind of better decisions with that budget overall. So that's often a good kind of compelling metric to help people understand that overall effectiveness of the mix. And then the other thing that I would say is, data is such a polarizing thing. And me being in this world, it can be really hard sometimes, because people either love me if they've got that growth mindset, and it's like, yes, data is, enablement, and I can make a decision either good or bad off the back of this. But then other people are like, get away from me. I don't want to know, and I don't want to know that I've made a bad decision, and I just want to put my head in the
Yes.
sand about it. And I think really the biggest tip that I've learned is about framing it in such a way that makes it feel really palatable and easy to kind of get on the bus. It's sort of, this is an
Yeah.
opportunity. This is, how much could we make a fantastic, more profitable set of decisions when we know what doesn't work,
Yes.
and being able to make it okay for people to fail.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, they are two excellent examples. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a small business owner who would not want to know how they can be more cost effective with their spending, how they can get the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to anything, let alone marketing. So I think, taking both of those approaches would really work. What are the biggest mistakes that you see businesses make when it comes to marketing attribution?
So there's actually two massive mistakes that I see all the time, and they're like usually in my little quick win bundle, because I know that we can make some better, make some more profit really quite quickly by looking at these two things. So the first one is just questioning and diving a little bit deeper into the metrics that the platforms give us. So for example, Facebook has a default attribution window of 28 days post-click and 1 day post-view. Yes. So what that means is if you're looking at how many leads you've got, or what the overall kind of return on investment looks like in your Facebook account, it will by default also be counting anyone who came from a different channel, who converted from a different channel, but they might have seen a Facebook ad on their path.
Okay. Yeah.
So this might make us think that Facebook's performing better than it is, unless we kind of dive a little deeper. Right. So that Facebook is about to change it back down to 7 days, which I'm very happy about, because I think there's probably been a bit of uproar in the community. But it's just so important to check and know, not just take those metrics on face value, but really understand what is the definition. How are Facebook or how is Google defining bounce rate, for example? Like, how do we understand what these metrics mean and what they tell us, because it could change the way that we interpret them and therefore what we do with that information.
Yes. Yeah.
So the second thing that I see happen all the time is that people are often spending too much in that retargeting. So
okay, wow.
I think that I'm like often brought in as the marketing police sometimes to kind of understand, which agencies are performing really well, or what activity is working for me and what isn't. I think that remarketing makes us feel those feel good feelings, because it can look like, cost per acquisition for a lead, for example, like it costs us less because these people have seen us before. But my question, when we think a bit bigger and we don't think about the channel performance, and this is kind of what we were talking about before, when we go a bit bigger and we think, okay, but what else could we be doing in that process? And if email, for example, is a really cost-effective strategy for nurturing, then could we just make sure that we're retargeting people who didn't open that last email? Yes. And then that means that we're spending way less to achieve the same outcome. Yeah. So that's usually like a huge win. I'll do that like within a couple of weeks, that client's making more money, and we reallocate the spend that we were spending in remarketing into reaching new eyeballs, and those people are converting.
Yeah, I love it. And for those people, I mean, if you've listened to this podcast before, you've probably heard the term remarketing, particularly when we're talking about Facebook ads. But essentially what it is when you're tracking people who visit your website or watch your video on Facebook or perform a certain action. We can actually collect the data of that, or we can't, but Facebook can, or Google can. We can collect that data and then actually send out ads to them, knowing that they've already watched your video or visited your website or performed a certain action on your website page, so that you know that they're kind of closer to the sale. They've already engaged with your business. So generally it's a pretty powerful way to market, because you're speaking to people who are already aware about your brand. However, what you're saying, Kate, and this has happened and it annoys me too, is, for example, when I've gone to a website and purchased a product, and then they reserve me an ad showing me that product. I'm like, dude, I just bought it.
I'm furiously nodding and agreeing. I see this all the time. And this is a perfect example even of when I was talking about the attribution window. Facebook will, like in that instance, Facebook's double counting your revenue, and it looks like it's working. It looks like Facebook could be working well for you. And terrifyingly, I recently ran a report for someone and found that they weren't even breaking even their Facebook, but Facebook looked like it was driving a significant amount of revenue, but it wasn't.
So was this in the ad platform itself? This is attribution in the ad platform itself. So this is not when you go into the dashboard on the organic news feed and you see post views and, video views and that sort of stuff for the last 28 days. This is actually when you're reviewing your ad stats. So you're selling something online, you're advertising that via Facebook, people click through to your website and purchase the product, but you're saying those stats around how much Facebook is responsible for the sale of those products is not necessarily the whole truth.
Definitely. And it's exactly as you say, you could have come from Google and purchased that dress that you have been eyeing off for a while and gone to Facebook later in the day. And if that company serves you an ad with that dress on it, you can bet that Facebook's taking credit for that purchase too, even though...
Interesting. Wow. It's just the fact that you've been on Facebook and you've seen the ad and actually coincidentally purchased the dress that you'd seen the ad for, and Facebook's taking the credit. That's cheeky. But they're changing that, did you say?
They're changing it down to 7 days, which we're
might
very
eliminate
happy about.
The coincidence, the coincidental activity. Yeah.
But either way, you can actually break it down. So in the Facebook ad reporting platform, it's 2 clicks, and I have a post on Instagram walking through exactly how to do it.
Right.
But there's like 2 clicks and you can actually see, okay, how many purchased 28 days post view, 7 days post view, 1 day post view, 28 days post click, 7 days post click, 1 day post click.
Right.
And that's really helpful, because then you can determine as well how many people saw it out on Facebook and bought that same day. And then that shows you that ad's super effective.
Super. Yeah. That's excellent. Yeah. Because I know as a consumer, I might see something on Facebook as a Facebook ad, but if it's like a couple $100 or whatever, I might go to the website, leave the tab open, go back a few times to work out if I really, really want it. And then, in 3 days' time, I might purchase it at the time. So people can take a bit of time to be convinced. So that's really good.
And that's why that path length and time lag can come in handy, because with all of this information and that context for you to understand that that's how your consumer interacts with you, imagine what that would do for your ability to make decisions about how to capture them and how to nurture them.
That's right. And how to convince them that $200 is a damn good spend. Damn good spend. Okay, so your 3 top tips or even considerations for effective marketing attribution.
Tip number 1, make sure that the tracking is set up properly. So get your Google Analytics installed. And even if it is a small investment to have your developer look at it properly for you, or find a tagging expert, there's a lot of them on, Upwork and Fiverr, people who are phenomenal at this and can whip it up in an hour or so. Just being able to make sure that we've got the tracking right and it's something reliable that we can refer to is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
The second thing is starting that change log. It's just such a simple, small step that we can all take. Our memories are not that good. and we can go, oh yes, that spike, or something that, I seem to see a lot of sales come through at the moment. What did I change?
Yeah.
What could be responsible for that? And of course it could still be a number of things, but even if you made 3 decisions on one day, it's one of those 3 things, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the third one is, checking that path length and time lag, I feel like is, of all the metrics that you can look at, it gives you immediate context to understand how people are engaging with you, and therefore how much time should you spend on those attention driving initiatives and how much in nurturing.
Now, if someone, on that last one, if someone's not actually selling something on their site, is that path length and time lag still relevant? Is there something that we can still track there?
Great question. So if it's a lead based site, still the same thing. Because you'd still want to know how long it takes for that person to take some kind of meaningful action.
Yes.
But if it is like just a brochure based site, so there's no action for that person to take other than maybe, an offline phone call.
Yeah.
then the next best way for me to kind of bring some level of context to try to understand that is actually just mapping my customer journey. So even if it's quite intuitive initially and based off of your experience, you know your customers, you know your business, to get an understanding of, you know, how long does it really take people to come through this this sort of funnel from when they first heard about me? And it can often be a question. I love that we often get so distracted by, you know, digital data. But I always ask, how did you hear about us?
Yeah,
always.
Me too.
Always.
Yeah.
And I hate it when there's, you know, lots of, you know, digital experts that say, oh, that's not reliable. I mean, even if that customer hasn't really remembered, they've still told you what was most meaningful to them. So it's still like, even if they actually probably saw you on TV first, if they've said Facebook, it's because that's where they hang out.
That's where they hang out. That's where they paid attention to you. It could just be the last time that they saw you when they were in the mindset where they decided to buy. But as you said, it is absolutely integral data. And a lot of the time when I ask that question, because a lot of my marketing is kind of brand, I need to get better at the conversion, the level of my marketing. But a lot of the time when I do ask that question, you know, they'll say, oh, I've just seen your stuff. I've seen it for years. But they'll say, but I've seen it on Facebook. I see your posts on Instagram all the time, or I see your stuff on LinkedIn all the time. So it's like, well, good. You know, at least I know that is working, you know. And then in my head, I'm going, okay, is this the right kind of customer? You know, is this the right client for me? Is it the right, you know, kind of work that I want to work with? Great. And they've seen my stuff on Facebook and now they're here and we're about to do business.
Definitely. And then, you know, that's you running attribution in your own mind based on all of the data that you're capturing. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good to know. And I know for a lot of small businesses, this is where they really, particularly if they're not selling online, or even if they're not capturing their leads online in terms of, you know, people filling out a consultation request or contact form or anything like that. Generally we lose them at the point where they leave the website. No longer can we track them. It's at that point that the small business owner, if you haven't got any of that kind of ability to purchase on your website, then there should be something manually that you're doing, as you said, even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet that just says, you know, where did they come, what was the lead, what day was it received, where did they come from? Bang. It can just be a written piece of paper. It's really important information.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things to do as well is to follow up with a little bit of a quick survey as well. So if you're like engaging with your customer one-on-one, or you pick up the phone, as a lot of my clients have, you know, phone appointments that they hold, being able to then follow up with an email that then asks them a few questions right when they're kind of warm with you and they've just come off the back of a conversation, that could provide you with data that, you wouldn't otherwise have.
Great idea. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so, I mean, I've just had such a fantastic time chatting to you, Kate. This has been so much fun. Now, if our listeners have had just as much fun and they'd like to connect with you or find out a little bit more about what you do, firstly, how do you help businesses with this? Do you actually do some of the Facebook advertising and that sort of stuff as well, or is it just the measurement side you help businesses with?
Now it's just the measurement side. So I used to do all of that, and that's probably why I became so obsessed with unpicking this impossible puzzle. But yes, now I either run reports for a small number of clients, or I set up reporting frameworks, and then I have data literacy and leadership kind of mentoring sessions that I run with people to kind of go, if you've got your own data and you just need to have a powwow with someone who can like help you understand what that means and what decisions to make, then there's that offering too.
Fantastic. So if there are any businesses out there that would like to get in touch with you about that, where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is sptagency.co, or you can find me on Instagram at spt_agency. And I'm always sharing my sort of tips on, look at this metric, and did you know that Facebook's trying to trick you, and all of those little like tidbits of information, as well as I have a 5-minute Friday newsletter, which is completely free, and I'll share, one key metric to look at and exactly how to do it and what it means every Friday.
Oh my gosh, I'm signing up to that now. So do you just sign up for that newsletter on your website?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that, Kate. I really, really appreciate all your generosity in this chat. I've had a ball. You are obviously such a topic expert in this space, and so I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. It has been such a joy to spread my geekery. And I hope to have converted one more geek today.
Well, you've definitely made me even more passionate about it. So you could pretty much, tick that off as a conversion. That's awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Well, there wraps up some more fantastic tips from another awesome marketer. Love it. Hey, if you are really enjoying these episodes and feel like they are helping you become a better marketer, head into your podcast app and hit the subscribe button. That way, you will not miss an episode and the marketing goodness will just keep flowing in week on week. You can also subscribe to our weekly small business marketing tips at dragonflymarketing.com.au. And hey, if you're on Facebook and love yourself a group and a community, head on into Facebook, search for the How to Do Marketing group and request access to join. We'd love to see you there. So until next time, happy marketing.